We're here at notable Austinite's home, Nolan Potter. Join us on our journey as we enter.
Hello. Hey, how are you doing?
Good.
Welcome. Come on in. Sure. I could talk about that for a long time, too.
Okay, so I think we got it going. Yep, she lives.
She lives.
So that's the thing about like recording though, and I guess just to jump right into that,
Sure.
with how precious are you with stuff? I know that some people it's like, oh, the mic's got to be hung the right way, all this stuff. I just throw the mic on the floor a lot of the time. I don't know where you're at.
When it comes to that kind of stuff, I'm not careful, or nor do I have like the training to know if I'm doing something right or not, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've been trying to get better at like phasing issues, like with the drums. That's the main thing of like mic placement, is like if things are going to be in phase or out of phase. But it kind of is like at a certain point is like, is it not just an artistic choice to have something be out of phase? You know what I mean? Like technically it's not right, but you can also always fix that in post too. There's like the phase switch thing, you know? So if like two overheads on the drums are sounding slightly like they're canceling each other out, you know what I mean? You can just flip the phase on one of them.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the right way to do it. I mean, I've definitely worked with people that are like, we're going to spend a half an hour like measuring everything and like exactly positioning every mic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like that. I'm not precious with anything. I don't even deal with like, I hardly ever do like multiple takes where like you can edit it back. Like if I don't like something, I'll delete it instantly, start over, you know, instead of like, well, maybe I'll use like 1 second of that one take and like composite this whole thing together.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not good with that kind of stuff. And also it's just like time takes so much time that I could be doing something else, you know?
What do you do for miking drums? Like, what do you?
I've used a lot of different techniques, I think, but I almost always have like I do a 57 on the snare, a 57 underneath the snare, 57s on the toms.
Yeah.
Sometimes 57 on the kick. I don't have like a legitimate kick mic yet. That's like one of the next things I need to buy, but I have this set of like, I forget what brand, Digital Reference or something. It's like a very cheap drum mic brand, and I'll toss one of those fully inside the kick drum. And just like it sits on a blanket in there and just picks up whatever. Yeah, I mean, as far as like drum miking goes, there's definitely, if the drums ever sounded good, it's because I somehow like managed to get them where I want them, and then they get mastered by a really excellent mastering engineer, is JJ Golden, does all the mastering for Castle Faces stuff.
Oh, cool.
And so like when it's mastered, it's like, well, this sounds incredible. I could have sent like the most dog shit track, you know what I mean? And like he masters it and it just sounds amazing. So
cool.
Yeah, I'm not too, I hardly ever do it the same way twice, unless it's like I have two songs that need drums at once. I'm like, well, I'll just leave the mic set up, you know, and go to the next one.
Yeah.
But I'm always changing stuff around.
I'm kind of the same way. The drum, it's almost like drums lends itself to that, where it's just like, I don't know, you got to throw up overheads, and it's like, are these exactly like they were? And I know that the retention rate on this is probably already through the bottom of the floor, because I'm just geek out about this stuff just because I need to, like, I really want to know. It's like, oh, what are you doing? You know?
Yeah,
like,
I don't
you
get
can
to
always
talk
change
about it very much, except with like the people, like my bandmates and people I work with, you know. But most of the time, I'm recording just myself, playing all the instruments, you know. So it's a very non-verbal process.
Is that what you start with, the drums, then, when you're recording everything?
No, a lot of times I'll do drums last, or like...
Oh, really?
As far as like the basic tracks, I'll like try to get everything as lined up to the click as possible, you know, and then add the drums later. Gotcha. And then maybe go back and like redo some other stuff once the drums are in there, because the drums always push or pull the click in a different way, you know.
Okay.
It's kind of weird. I feel like that's probably like of the stuff I record myself, there's like if there's any sort of signature sound, it's that, like it's never a bunch of people playing in a room together, you know what I mean, which is the ideal for a record. But
right,
I have to like catch up with myself. It's like, was I a little bit behind the click, was I in front of the click, you know, and then like that kind of expands into this weird sort of delay, gives everything this like wash, you know, that stuff's not like right lined up on top of each other, or doesn't have like the humanizing groove element of a bass player and a drummer recording together in the same room, you know.
Right.
Yeah, which is a lot of time the critique of the click is that you don't want things to come off too like
exactly
robotic.
Yeah, I never deal with like you know, like it would be a very rare occasion for me to like quantize something to the click, you know what I mean? Or it's like the equivalent of auto-tune to me. It's just like not done. But then that results in some weird, like, you can hear all kinds of mistakes and stuff in my records if you listen. I hear, that's like all I hear anymore is the mistakes. But but yeah, I mean, that's what makes it what it is, you know. It's too easy to be perfect with the computer, so I have to like set up limitations for myself, you know.
For
like,
sure.
I'm never gonna open that program. I'm never gonna use that plugin. I'm never gonna use this like function, you know. So
yeah, like you were talking about like things being you know, like sounding a certain way, like they might sound kind of, I just feel like now it's kind of almost like the default, almost like a little easier to even get things to sound kind of perfect. So it's like you said before about like, you almost know, oh, this was a choice to make it like this or whatever, which is kind of cool.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, the choice to leave it that way, I guess, instead of like endlessly tinkering with it and nudging stuff and being like, is that on the beat? Because especially if you're like mixing and producing your own stuff, it's like your brain is going to trick you into thinking that it's wrong. Like, the more you listen to something, the more you're like, that's not right. It's not right. But, you know, somebody listening to it for the first time is never going to
100%.
Yeah, you know, like think like, oh, the bass sounded like it was a millisecond behind the drums there or something, you know.
Right. My dad was like, he did a lot of drywall work or whatever before. And anyway, so like in my house, like we were doing drywall, and it's the same thing though. It's like no one will ever notice this little thing, but it's like it's all you see when you when I go in the kitchen. I'm like, I mess that up right there.
Yeah, I used to work construction with my older brother too. It's the same thing. You know, at least for me, I was just doing it as like a, you know, it was like a job over the winter to make some money before I moved to Austin. And so I was just like, it's fine. I mean, it's fine. It's like the nail is all the way in the post or whatever. You know, we were working on dairy farms doing construction in the dead of winter in Iowa, just like the most miserable stuff ever. But he was just, you know, such a perfectionist because it's like, you know, my name is on this product, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel the same way about my music, almost like in the opposite way, where it's like, if this is so perfect that it just sounds like a computer made it, I wouldn't want to have my name attached to something, because that doesn't describe me as a person, you know?
Right.
Like, I like stuff where there's little artifacts all over the place of like the moment that you created the music, you know?
Yeah. That's an interesting thing to think about though, is like, is this an extension of like who I am or my personality? I saw a Rick Rubin quote the other day that was like, does this thing you're working on describe like you now in this moment, like who you are right now, which I thought was like a really kind of a cool thing to think about when almost just to like help you even figure out like what to write about or in what vein to like create, you know?
For sure. Yeah, for
That's
me,
cool.
especially like just making all the tunes myself, you know, playing all the parts myself, it definitely, more than I realize it at the time that I'm making a song, it's like an extension of my internal monologue, essentially, you know?
Yeah. Do you ever listen to something and then you're like, it kind of like takes you back to the time when you were like making it at all?
Yeah, kind of. It's weird because like I have this, my brain does this weird sort of like memory wipe thing. It's like if I'm done with the song, like it might have taken me like weeks to like write it and learn it and record it and all this stuff, and then like as soon as I'm like, yeah, that's done, it's just gone. Like I don't remember recording it, I don't remember writing it, you know. and then like have to go and relearn it with the band and like turn it into a live show song, you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess not. I mean, it does take me back to like when I listen to Music is Dead, I think about, you know, working during the pandemic on music and like not knowing what was going to come of it at all. And it never was like meant to be like, I wasn't even going to put it out with Castleface. I was going to put it on Bandcamp, and I sent it to John and Matt from Castleface. And I was like, what do you guys think of this? Like, before I finish it, I'm just going to put it up and sell it on Bandcamp. And they were like, don't do that. Like, we're going to put this out, you know? Like, it was more just like experimenting with working on stuff by myself. Because the first record was like with the full live band in the studio, you know, like months and months of recording and mixing and all kinds of stuff. And yeah, this was like the complete opposite of that, like a totally solo process, you know.
Yeah. Did you I don't know, I guess now experiencing kind of both ends of the spectrum there, is there one that you might think you prefer? They both have their benefits.
They definitely do. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's hard cuz like a record's only really done when you send it in. You know what I mean? Like, I listen to them and I just hear all the stuff that I could change now, or like stuff that, like, having played it with bands live over the years, it's like, well, we do it this way. Like, I should have done that on the record, you know. But on the record, I didn't know that we were ever gonna be a band again. At least for the second record, you know, that live music was ever gonna come back, or, you know.
Yeah.
So when you're in there and you're being so insular, how gratifying was it that they were like, this is good, we want to put this out?
Yeah, it was amazing, because it not only for the 6 songs that are on that record, but all the other stuff that I was recording at the time, you know, I was like, I'm on to something now, you know. Even then, like, I mean, once John and Matt were like, we like this, we want to put it out, then I was like, well, now I have to, like, change a bunch of shit about it. Like, I redid all the drums and, like, redid a lot of the bass and a lot of the vocals, and just knowing that it's going to be on vinyl and going to be available to a much wider audience because it's on Castleface, you know. So yeah, I changed a lot, and then John was like, well, I liked the way it sounded before, you know. It's like,
really?
When it sounded like, you know, it sounded like a dude in his bedroom who doesn't know what he's doing, but I guess that's like part of the appeal of it, you know.
Yeah.
There is a charm to that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, and I'll ride that wave of charm as far as I can, because I still don't really. I mean, I never want to know too much about the process. You know what I mean? About like what a professional would do in this situation.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, it's not so much just me anymore. Like, I still do record solo at home all the time, but I'm much more in collaboration with Dylan Fernandez, he plays bass in the Nightmare Band now. But he and I have been friends since I moved to Austin, basically about 8 years, and just have been in so many bands together and collaborated on stuff. And he's a much more like pro, like he's got like the tape machine and all the rack mount gear. Like he like took classes and stuff. Still is taking classes in audio engineering.
Oh, cool.
So between us, we kind of have that, like, you know, I have like the weird, like sort of like idiot approach to things, and he's like, well, this is how we would actually do it, you know, like, and then balance that out. He's a little more conservative with his mixing choices, where I'm like, crank it, or like throw flange on all the drums or something, you know what I mean? So we make a good team. We just released a song with the Dungeons and Dragons LP that they put out last month. That was the two of us working together, and with Marshall Lowry on saxophone too, who's in the new Nightmare Band as well.
Nice.
So that's kind of an example of like the collaboration process. You know, he like mixes things real clean, and you can hear everything really well, where I'm just like turning everything up and layering and layering and layering, and it's just like a wall, you know.
Yeah.
So we make a good team.
That's cool. I lean towards that stuff too, where it's just, I don't know why, but like it's almost like if I want something fuzzy, it's like, yeah, I want it to be fuzzy, man. Yeah. Like, you know, and I know that I think I'm trying and getting a little better at like nuance, but I'm honestly the same way with like flavors, like sauces. Like if I want a lot of ketchup, man. I don't know. I don't just want it to, you know, it tastes like ketchup sneezed on it. I don't know.
That's a good point. Wow, I never thought about that, because I am that way with food too. I'm looking at Julie over there. She's nodding.
Really?
Because like
maybe they're connected. I don't know.
She's like, I'm like, what if we added this spice to whatever? You know what I mean? Like, nobody's ever tried that before. Yeah. You know, it's like, because it's not going to be good.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a reason. I've thought about that.
I am with food for sure.
Really?
Maybe I love cooking, but I'll make some strange choices too.
Sometimes I think with like cooking and stuff, it's like you said, like, how do no one's ever tried this? And it's like, I don't think there are any ideas that have gone. Do you think there's any idea with food that hasn't been like,
I don't know,
explored? I guess maybe there's so much food.
You follow the stupid food Reddit?
No,
there's some really good stuff on there. It's pretty good scrolling.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like the latest. It's just insane. I mean, you know,
sometimes people do stuff
pizza and stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like crazy shit.
Are people saying that it's like good though, or is it just like
to
be goofy?
No, it's usually just like, this is stupid.
Yeah,
Why would you ever do this?
I do think there's some truth to how you do one thing is kind of how you approach everything.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you look at our house, you know, and just me and Julie's identity together. I mean, I should say that Julie, my partner over there, my partner in love and life and artwork and everything. She did the album cover for Music Is Dead, and working on music videos. She's collaborated with Taylor Brown on other videos that we've done before. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this house is like it's our personality, just like barfed all over the place, you know.
Thank you for the tour. It was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're really happy here. We want to document it before it gets torn down like every other beautiful little East Austin.
It's a shame.
Hobbit hole. Yeah. It's literally the only house like this on the block. They're just all getting mowed down. Like,
seriously.
The property that we're sitting on is worth more than, both of our lives, basically.
Yeah.
So, and not the house. I mean, they're going to demolish everything. It's like, which is cool. Yeah. We can do whatever we want, but it's just like, that's the typical Austin story now. This will be the second house I've lived in that got demolished, and so we had to move out, you know.
Man.
It's like, why?
Yeah.
Just like improve what's here, or you know what I mean? If they wanted to build like an extension, we would live here just like this for 10 years, you know, if we could.
Yeah.
But no.
Yeah, the character of like just like everything's changing. It's funny because I haven't lived here my whole life or anything like that, but the small amount of time that I have been here, I'll like go say 6 months without being in a certain part of town, and then I go there and I'm like, whoa, what? Like, it's just that quick. Everything's just different and scraped. And,
we had that last night. We went to COCs at Hotel Vegas, and I mean, I worked at Hotel Vegas for almost 4 years, 3.5 years, something like that. And so was there like every night, you know, and like watching stuff gradually change. But now it's like, if we don't go out unless I'm playing a show, pretty much. Like, we're very much domesticated, you know. But we walked around the old neighborhood around Hotel Vegas last night, and it's just insane. Like, they built a condo right across the street from Vegas, and like blacked out the whole. You used to be able to see like almost down to the river, and like, you know, I don't know.
That building that was across from there that they tore down, I don't even know why I liked it. I think it was an old plant or something, but I liked it. It was like one of my favorite buildings.
It was like a meat packing plant. Yeah.
Okay. And it was like abandoned.
Made you feel like we're like, it was abandoned. It was always covered in graffiti, and it's like, yes, this is like our part of town.
Yeah, it was cool. And like there was just like a couple like little architecture-y like 70s elements to it. I'm like, that's a cool looking little building. And then it was just like an empty lot, that I'm sure people like skated at and stuff. But yeah. And I guess I haven't seen the new condo there. That's pretty.
It's crazy, man. And I just like when I worked there, there would be people that complained. Like, they're like, well, I just moved here from California, living at the condos like down the block from Hotel Vegas.
Yeah.
And OCs would play outside. And of course, it's like loud as fuck, you know. And they're like, I just moved here and like I didn't. You know, like, this can't happen. I'm like, why the fuck do you think this condo is even here? You know what I mean? It's because, like, this venue created a cultural, like, thing in this neighborhood, and now this is a cool neighborhood, and you decided to move here without doing your research, and now you're calling the cops on us. Like, what the hell?
That's the thing. When all that stuff starts happening and money starts pushing out the things, the thing about Austin to me is, and, like, the thing that makes it cool is it's, like, cultural identity and all the things that, you know, people do here and the art and everything. And once that gets squished out, I'm just like, well, then what do we even have?
Yeah.
Because there's like cool cities,
into, you know, Dallas or whatever.
Yeah. Because like the thing about this city is like, there's not really anything like I guess it happened to like Boulder in Colorado. It's like I guess back in the 80s it was like awesome, and then now it's like it's just money. But the mountains are still right there, and they can't really move those.
Yeah, they
but
can't
like
take
here,
the river
like,
and the green belt and but they can limit your access to it essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've
tough.
had a lot of conversations like this summer, like this other interview I did that was all about like a musician's perspective on all the changing stuff. I mean, it'd be cool if it like, like I know a lot of people are moving here for the money and the tech industry and everything, but like what makes people stay here is the culture, and like musicians in Austin have a big part to play in why that culture exists,
Yeah, 100%.
And don't get anything for it really, like can't.
Yeah.
Like it's so impossible to make ends meet just as a musician here. It has to be a musician and something else, and like society at large is basically just like, well, fuck you, if you can't figure out being a musician and something else, then you're dead,
Yeah, it is interesting because it does kind of the musicians do so much to prop up the city as like giving it its identity that the world
the identity
sees.
that it wants, is the live music capital. It's like, but that doesn't mean we have like I don't know. I can't speak for all the musicians in Austin because there's a lot of people that are killing it, making a living.
Yeah,
it's just all about hustling, and I'm very at least lately like very focused on my thing, like pushing that as hard as I can, and it might turn out to be a career,
So you're talking about just like specifically pushing like the music that you create,
just doing my own original music. Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can make a living playing in cover bands here, no problem, or if you're like a jazz drummer, you will have a gig every night of the week, but yeah, I mean, for like a singer songwriter, I don't know. It's tough, but I don't have anything else to compare it to, really. I mean, I came from Michigan, where there's like not much of a music scene at all. I mean, there's a good local music scene in Grand Rapids, but it doesn't expand. It never really like grew. Yeah. As far as what I could tell when I lived there, Like in Austin, if you start a band in Austin, like it's very easy to become a national act, But because there's attention for musicians here, but in Michigan it wasn't so much like that.
Yeah,
I feel like we had a similar upbringing. Like we're from Indiana.
Yeah.
Well, he's from like Colorado, but then he moved to Indiana in like 4th grade, and so we've been best friends since like 6th grade. We started playing music when we were like 12 together, and but we grew up where like in an interesting time because like there was like no internet.
Yeah, like, exactly.
They're like right at the beginning,
Yeah, we didn't have internet for the longest time either. We didn't have record stores or anywhere to like find out about cool music.
Exactly.
Right.
And but we're just trying to find this like some pop punk stuff and like
me too.
I also grew up like in church, and I read somewhere that you like grew up playing in church, and so like I'm in the church band, you're in the church band, and
absolutely
you go to like do things like Reliant K concerts, and
that was
maybe
my
look
first
forward
concert ever.
Okay.
Where is that? Do you know where that picture is of me at the Reliant K? Hang on. While we're talking, I'm just gonna.
How old were you?
You're perfect.
Yeah, man, that was it. Where in Indiana did y'all grow up?
Just like suburb of Indianapolis.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. I remember going to Indy when I was a kid. My stepdad owns a couple tractor dealerships.
Oh, really?
And he lived in Indianapolis for a long time and worked for Firestone, I believe, tires, some kind of tire company. If it wasn't Firestone, it was something else. But so he would take us down there. Oh yeah, here we go.
Oh, right on top.
Reliant K concert. I got my T-shirt and everything.
Oh man, this just looks like
that festival was in Indiana. I wonder if you guys would have been there.
Oh gosh,
it was like a huge like Christian rock festival.
Was it Ichthus?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, it was in Indiana or Ohio. I can't remember, but it was that Ichthus sounds about right.
Yeah, dude. Interesting.
That's great.
that literally just looks like this. If someone had to guess, like, where's this person? Where was this?
This is the
You'd
one.
be like, really this is an Ohio kid,
Oh, that's perfect. Yes, I had a Reliant T-shirt myself.
That's funny, man.
That's great. And trying to like listen to Blink-182 when you're not at church.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. It was like Relient K was like my public stand-in for Green Day and Blink-182 and Alkaline Trio and whatever else.
Yeah,
Found Glory and all that stuff. But it's like, for us growing up in the Midwest without internet, it was like that was like the most radical, rebellious music that I could have been listening to. Because I didn't know any. Like, if I had known that, that punk was like something that started in the 70s.
Oh, yeah, right.
And then I could have been listening to, the
Black
Stooges.
Flag. Yeah, right.
Especially being from Michigan. I was like, why didn't anybody tell me about the Stooges?
Yeah, about Iggy.
Right.
Yeah. Like that punk like was invented here.
Oh, man.
Yeah, we found out, I think, just a lot through just skateboarding, like through like Tony Hawk or.
Yeah, that's what I always talk about Tony Hawk too. That like those soundtracks had such a huge impact on me because like it wasn't music like that wasn't available to us. Like
no one's listening to it out there,
Right, exactly. And it wasn't going to be on the modern rock radio or whatever, or even classic rock radio. In high school, I started getting like illicitly getting like music magazines and stuff. Like I think my high school girlfriend at the time was selling magazines for school or whatever, fundraising.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I got like Blender and I think Rolling Stone for a little while and had like hid them from my parents and everything. It was like that's how I started finding out about new stuff,
Wow.
It's even weird to even think about finding out about things through a magazine now. Just the internet is everything's so easy.
Yeah.
And like I remember trying to find bands online, like search, but it wasn't even a thing to search and find music. There wasn't like YouTube. You can like watch one thing. It's like you want to watch these 13 other things that are similar.
Suggestion. Yeah, it didn't
crazy.
have that, and music wasn't on YouTube either for such a long time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember before we started recording, we were talking about Magma and listening to Magma, my favorite band of all time. When I first discovered them, I was just out of high school. I think it was right when I dropped out of college, actually. My first semester into college, I dropped out and discovered Magma. Not that those things are related at all, but yeah,
Magma made me do it.
I heard about them in an interview with the Mars Volta, actually, who was at the time like my favorite band of all time.
Oh yeah,
they were kind of like the bridge from the pop punk thing into like the more progressive. At the drive-in, obviously, and then Mars Volta and Coheed and Cambria and all that stuff was like my jumping off pad into the past, you know?
Yeah.
But Mars Volta mentioned Magma in an interview with Nardwuar, I think, and I like paused it immediately. It was like, what's Magma? Looked it up, and like there was like, like 3 lines on Wikipedia and 1 album, and it was only on iTunes. So I like bought it. It was the album we were just listening to, and it was the only thing there was online. There was like maybe 1 like really grainy clip of them playing on YouTube, and that was it. And I was just like, this is it. This is the band for me,
Yeah.
But it used to be so much more exciting to finding music back in the day because you had to like really work for it.
You really did. Yeah, that's true.
I remember Shelby was just the other day you were talking about hearing Stacy's mom and just hoping, like sitting by the radio.
Waiting for it to come on again.
And then hoping they say who it is.
Well,
exactly, yeah.
Because I didn't know. Well, the thing was that like people were talking about this song and I was like, I've never heard this song.
Right.
And so I was just like, I guess I just got to sit by the radio and just like hope that I hear it and they say that that's what it is. Because I didn't even know what type of song it was at all or anything.
Man.
But yeah, it's just goofy like that. And back in the day too, like, that was it. Like if you're trying to catch a Beatles song, like it's like, oh yeah, just hope that it's on the radio.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't until my mom met my stepdad that like he brought like more popular music into our house because we grew up very much like my mom had like she like missed out on childhood in a lot of ways. She had kids when she was like she had my sister when she was 16. So like she didn't really have like a time of like getting into like, oh, this is my favorite band and this is, you know what I mean? So yeah, when she met my stepdad, he brought in like, he had like all the Beatles box sets and the Rolling Stones box sets and Ray Charles and Stevie Ray Vaughan was a big one. He really loved Stevie Ray Vaughan. And like, that's where like I learned to play guitar mostly was he's like, you should learn to play like this guy. So I'd like, almost in defiance being like, that's not hard,
Oh yeah, that's cool.
My dad did the same thing. He brought home a Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble album.
Yeah.
And he's like, "This is it, Josh." I'm like, "I don't know." And
Yeah,
like,
if you're gonna play guitar, and I had a Stratocaster at the time too,
yeah,
and he's like,
perfect. Yeah.
he's like, "You got to play this." I was like, "I'm trying to be Billy Joe Armstrong, dude." Like,
dude, yeah. I need to know 3 chords.
Yeah,
okay,
I'm never gonna use that bridge or that neck pickup, dude. Like, I had like the pickups taped off. I'm only using the bridge pickup. But yeah, I learned Stevie Ray. So he was very supportive of me moving to Austin.
right.
Oh yeah.
He's like, yeah, Stevie Ray Vaughan.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Was there a time, like, I feel like this kind of happens where you're like trying to find, whatever pop punk stuff, and you think this is it, and like meanwhile, like my dad and my mom are like, but this stuff is cool, and I'm just like, no, that stuff sucks, or whatever. Not that it sucks, I'm just like, it's not it at all. And then eventually I just like come back and I'm like, no, that stuff was pretty cool, or whatever,
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think with my mom, the few bands that she did like were like Fleetwood Mac, Simon and Garfunkel, all this stuff that I just like thought of as mom music, like Carole King and like that kind of stuff, which now I love so much, but it just all sounded the same. I was like, this is mom music. I'm not listening to that,
Yeah.
And I think there was some of that. It wasn't until like, I don't know, it was just a different era. That was like the age before irony, you know what I mean? And before like the past was cool again. It seemed like it was all about like what's like the edgiest, at least for us Midwest kids that were very sheltered, you know what I mean? It was like we were doing the edgiest thing we could possibly think of, like skateboarding and listening to Blink-182, which now looking back is like,
it's like, oh, everybody was doing this,
right? It's like a pretty corporate thing to like right. Blink-182 was like one of the biggest bands of their day, and those albums were like way overproduced and like so much marketing and all this, like they were like a boy band essentially, you know, and a lot of that stuff was like that.
People were capitalizing on rebellion for sure.
And it wasn't until like I feel like Tame Impala was one of the first bands that got big that was like, oh, like we can sound like we're from the 60s or this, you know what I mean? Right, it's like you don't just have to like sound like whatever the newest band. Like I feel like most of the early 2000s for me with all the bands I was playing with were like, we have to like invent a new genre of music, you know what I mean? Instead of like paying homage to the stuff that we actually like Pink Floyd and the Beatles and,
Right. Hey, we're a band. Also, this is our podcast. I hope you're enjoying it. Our band sounds like this. Smoke is getting awfully greasy. All my self-care is down the drain. Little things build slowly but surely. Watching my future go away. And it's almost like you can only push it so clean, so chunky, so produced, and then it's like, well, what else is there to do? And it's like, oh, okay, well, let's space it out a little bit, and then like it's just almost like natural. It's like whatever. Yeah,
because this is what we're capable of doing with the stuff that we have at home. You know what I mean? Like for a long time, it was like I thought, like when I was in middle school and high school with my bands, is like we just have to keep playing this and then we'll get picked up and somebody's going to spend $1 million on us, you know what I mean?
It's the only story you know,
right? It's the only story that existed up to that point, really. I mean, like all of the 90s, the post Nirvana era was like, you just like got to be like the craziest, hardest band with the spikiest hair and exactly. And, like, and somebody will just come and it's like, no, we could actually do this ourselves. I mean, like I just missed out on that whole like sort of 90s DIY. You know what I mean? Because people were doing this, and we're like doing lo-fi music or like psychedelic music or whatever you want to call it. You know, throughout that whole era, there was like Brian Jonestown Massacre. I had no idea that was happening when I was a kid. You know, that kind of stuff was just like lost. You know,
we're over here listening to Now 14.
Yeah.
Seriously,
some Qual tracks on Now 14.
Stacey's mom. But
that's
so
interesting. Yeah.
You're wearing skinny jeans, you know, you're in there.
I was the first kid in high school with skinny jeans for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, what was that like? Was people giving you, were like, oh
yeah,
Nolan.
I mean, the town I grew up in is 600 people, Dairy town.
Okay.
100 kids in my entire high school.
Oh, whoa.
25 kids per class, basically. Yeah, it was just, insane. Sorry, continue.
No, I was just saying, yeah.
No, that's an interesting role, though, that, like, it's interesting that it's like, okay, there's some sort of something happen where I feel like that is like, I know I want something else, but I don't know what it is. And you're like trying to find it. And it's like, but what is the resource? Like now there's such a resource. You can find anything. It's insane. It's so easy and so convenient and awesome, honestly. But back then it's like, you're just like, I don't know. I guess I got the skinny jeans and I guess I'll keep looking. I never even went to record stores and went through bins or anything.
No,
either,
I didn't.
You know?
The closest record store to my house was like 2 hours away.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, right.
It was like, I didn't know that I was even supposed to be doing any of that.
Right.
Like I didn't have like a cool, I had older siblings who were cool, but not in that way. You know what I mean? They'd be like, check out this Red Hot Chili Peppers album. Like it's on the radio all the time. You know what I mean? You know, like introducing me to some, you know, my sister, I think more when my sister, like she's 11 years older than me, and she and her first husband were like very influential on me, being like, we're going to listen to The Wall from the beginning to the end. And you know what I mean? You'll see what it's all about. Or like, you know, we listened to, one of the night that my sister had their second kid, which I guess is like 14 years ago now, her husband and I listened to Bitches Brew front to back for the first time. He was like, you have to listen to this. This is like one of my favorite records. And it's like a monumental night, you know?
Yeah.
She like gave him a break from the hospital or whatever. And stuff like that. So I didn't get that until later on, you know. I mean, I started getting a little bit of that in middle school, high school, but not enough to be like, it was like essentially once I'm out of my mom's house, like my siblings were like, all right, now we can like turn you on to some cool stuff.
Okay.
But mostly her. She was a big fish head in the 90s.
Oh, really?
So they were into a lot of that kind of stuff that didn't really stick with me. I'm not a big jam band guy, but
yeah.
Not following around Widespread Panic.
No, not really.
No. You know, so like Shelby and I, we were trying to play music together, and it was hard, you know, to keep like anyone with us. Like there were like so many people in and out, but we're like playing a 60s cover band basically in middle school. And then, but on our own time, we're listening to like pop punk. And then like,
right.
Then with our friends, we're listening to like screamo or rap. And so it's just like an eclectic, just kind of a weird mishmash going on. And MySpace is starting to take off, and we're looking for music on there.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't know. We just didn't really know where to go, but we knew we liked music. But looking back, we're like, what were we doing? Like, why would we get together all the time and like even play? You know, there's something like, we were saying like, you're going after something you don't even realize.
But you don't have like a definitive direction, really. Right. You're just like, I don't know what the goal even is of this. And, but it just seems cool to be in it.
Yeah. It definitely. I think that I latched onto the pop punk thing because it just seemed like that's what you're supposed to do as a 13-year-old kid in the Midwest. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
But before that too, it was a huge mishmash. We didn't know it was cool. I remember thinking for the longest time that like Matchbox 20 was like a punk band.
Yeah.
Like I really didn't even know what I was looking for, like what I was talking about at all. Yeah, I mean, I guess like the one of the biggest turning points with that when I started to like get some concept of what music is about. This guy moved to our small town from Detroit, who was his name was Mike Ayub. He used to in the 70s he was a roadie for, I don't even remember all who, Yes and Kansas, and I think maybe even Genesis at some point. He turned me on to all those bands. Like when I was like a young kid, he moved to this small town with his family to like get away from the city or whatever, and like somehow gravitated towards the one like garage band in town, which was like me and my two friends, you know?
Yeah.
And it was like, what do you guys like, punk? And I was like, yeah, you know, we're punk kids. And he was like, oh, like the Stooges? I was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, but he turned me on to Yes and all that stuff when I was really young, and then it started to seep in that I was like, oh, this is like the stuff I really like. You know, like Roundabout was like my number one song of 5th grade.
Oh, really?
But I didn't understand it at all. I didn't know like the context.
Yeah.
I just liked all the imagery, and it was like, it's so long, like it's like a movie, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting to when you latch onto things as like a kid. It's just interesting looking back when sometimes I'm just like, I don't know why I even loved that so much, because it didn't fall into anything like what I was into or whatever. But like that seems like a perfect example of something that it kind of hits you. And then that if you listen to your music now, you're like, that makes sense. Like that reference and that through line kind of goes, and it's almost like it's already there. Like it's already in you.
It's like
and you listen,
a
and you're like, oh, this is in
you know,
me.
like I heard that song and I was like, I'm going to be doing something like this in, 25 years or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, crazy.
It's weird. It's just weird to me how because sometimes I think about that with, I mean, you're probably a good example. I don't, just hearing your story now, but sometimes I'm like, I don't even know why do I want to make music? It doesn't really make sense. It's all I want to do, but nobody in my family was like that and or has the desire to go and like create like a song really. And so it just like, I think this can apply to a lot of things where I just think it must just be in there. It's in there somehow. And then all of a sudden you're out in the world and something like kind of like triggers that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can't escape music. It's certain people are just like, you hear something and it like stops you. Oops.
Yeah.
And you're like, I have to figure that out. You know what I mean? And a lot of people are like, oh, that's cool, and just walk on, But I was always, my family is very musical, so it was always like talking about music, why do I like this? Why are we listening to this? In church it'd be like my mom would get me to pay attention to the songs by like following along the sheet music in the hymnal or whatever, and be like, cool. I'm singing this part and you're harmonizing with this part, and we'd like make a game out of it kind of.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah, my mom was a piano teacher when I was really young, so we'd have students coming in and out of the house all day and stuff, and it was I always knew that I wanted to make music. I mean, my first like real idea was that I whatever the music for Star Wars is, like I want to do that. Like that's what I'm gonna do. That really? Was my dream when I was a kid. I still love John Williams so much, but trying to learn the Star Wars theme on piano was my first memory of trying to make music.
Oh, really?
I was like 3. I must have been 3-4 years old or something.
Did you watch this? This is like me just pivoting, I guess. But did you watch that? There's a thing on Disney Plus now, and it's all about like the special effects that they like.
Yeah.
Did you watch that?
We've been watching a little bit of it. Yeah.
I don't know why I found that so just like.
Oh, I love it so much. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like blowing my mind. I was like, wow.
Yeah, we didn't finish it, but it's fascinating stuff. My favorite part was that the 2 of the guys that were on that original Industrial Lights and Magic team. They were the guys that invented pig nose amplifiers.
That's what I thought. I was going to bring it up in there when you had those. I was like, whoa, this is crazy.
I've always loved pig nose so much. I mean, just the whole idea of it, the weird little amps and like battery powered stuff, and like they have a very unique little sound. But yeah, it makes so much sense that guys like that would, what's missing from the music industry is a battery powered amp that you can wear on your belt. It was like the first thing like that. Yeah. And and they went on to do like to make like explosions for the Death Star and shit. Just like
it was so cool. Interesting to see how they did it and like how they would like make these little, that was just a model and that was upside down and like I don't know. But then the thing where they're like they got the guys that made the pig nose, and then all of a sudden they were talking about these guys were like, we're messing with this program. Anyways, that became Photoshop or whatever, and it's just like, wait, what?
Yeah.
These guys invented everything.
Totally.
But it was all, I don't know, all that creativity. That's the kind of stuff that I like really like about like just being around the creative process. I think I hear like, because I listen to like Conan talk about this. I listen to Conan's podcast, and he's just like, I just wanted to be behind the thing where there's a guy like rolling a giant wheel of cheese and like someone's walking, just all that creative. There's some sort of energy behind it, I think, and I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I brought up the ILM documentary when I was putting the new lineup of the band together. I was like, this is like what I'm trying to do is like what George Lucas was trying to do with ILM. It was like, I don't know exactly what I want, but I know that I haven't had it yet. You know what I mean? Like, I need like a new group of people to like do something that's not been done before, Yeah,
that's cool.
And that's how the new band kind of feels. It's like a whole new, fresh take on everything, and
it's exciting.
It's kind of crazy. I guess we haven't talked about the band very much, but when
it's
a different side of things.
When you're like doing stuff, do you feel how difficult, or is it difficult at all for you to like? I think this is just a realization that I'm coming to, is that like you can't do everything.
Yeah.
And so, especially with the stuff that you got going on, like, is it hard for you to like kind of delegate and be like, and just trust fully in somebody else? Or
it's tough. Yeah. I mean, I think that's one thing that led to a lot of the tension that we had with the first lineup of the band. And I say the first lineup, like we went through a lot of different people over the years, you know, but essentially the last lineup of the band that broke up at the beginning of summer had like legacy, like original members from when I first started it, you know.
Okay.
And now there's nobody that was in the very first lineup anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, trust was a big element of it. It's really hard for me to, I mean, like I said, like what I do in the studio is such a non-verbal process that's just in my brain. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then having to be like, well, first I have to relearn the songs, like I said, to teach them to people. And then to like translate that into somebody else's approach and style of playing, you know, it's tough. And to trust people with those parts, you know what I mean? Because to me, it's like, this is the easiest thing in the world, but that's because those are the notes that came out of my brain as I was coming up with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's tough. I think trust was a big thing that I was looking for with the new band. Is I can't be like on stage thinking about every single note that every single band member is playing all the time, because that's kind of where I was at before, and I feel like it would affect my own performance, that I can't focus on what I'm doing and being myself and engaging with an audience and like singing well, you know. It's trusting, like having full faith in somebody else's abilities to play your own music is it's a tough thing.
With your you know, how you've done your albums where you were doing it collaboratively, and then this most recent project with you recording all the parts, do you see Nolan Potter and the Nightmare Band more as a band or a solo project now?
I think now I'm looking at it more as a solo project. I've gotten into the swing of like doing a song all by myself from start to finish, you know. I want to open it back up. Now I have a band that I feel more comfortable taking into a studio, you know. Not to say anything about the other band, it's just we did a very specific thing. Like we were very much, you know, in tune to play these songs at this kind of show for these kind of people at this volume and just do it like that. There wasn't a lot of growth that I was seeing, and everybody kind of, the growth that was happening was like growing away from each other into other projects and people writing their own stuff, which is great, but it'd be weird for Nolan Potter's Nightmare Band to play somebody else's music, you know. That was kind of the point where I was starting to think like, is this, you know, like, is this a band or is it just me, you know? And now I'm not going to stop writing, you know what I mean? And for me, the writing process and the recording process are the same thing. Like I'm writing it as I'm recording it, and if it sounds good, I want to use it. Right. You know, not be like, this is a demo and take it to the band and have everybody learn it and then everybody think, well, we could change this and we could do it like this and then we could make it this full song. It's like, that is like the general way that like one songwriter works with their band. But for me, I just want to like see it out from start to finish if I'm in that mood. You know what I mean? At what point am I like, this is not a demo anymore. Like this is the actual song, you know? Yeah.
With the home recording equipment as good as it is now, it doesn't really have to be a demo. I feel like it used to just be like, well, you had like this task.
You got your 4-track and exactly.
But I mean, you're recording it in studio quality already, or is like, you know, it's what you want it. Like Shelby
my quality, exactly.
Yeah, you want it to be. You're intentionally trying to make it not sound perfect anyway, which in 2022 is really easy to make it sound perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So and that's why I don't. You know, I mean, it's not the only reason that I don't have expensive equipment. Money is definitely the primary reason. But, like, even if I did, I wouldn't want to get, you know, it's so easy to just be like, what microphone does blank use? And then just buy that microphone. You know what I mean? I want to find a microphone because it's, like, sitting in a bin somewhere in the back of a pawn shop. Or, you know what I mean? Like,
and then you can figure out. Because most mics or most just instruments, everything, they have something that like, oh, they do this thing well. You know, you got to find it, and then it becomes almost like its own instrument. You know,
yeah, totally.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I feel that way with a lot of microphones I've used. Not really any that I have right now, but But I guess there is this one mic that I've had for years and years. It's like, I forget what it's called. It's the Audio Technica AT4040, I think. And it's a pretty like standard, I think it's a condenser cardioid. I'm so bad with my terms and any technical information, but that's just the one that I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm just going to use this one. You know what I mean? So that one's become like sort of has like a character of its own because it's just like the one that if nothing else is working out, I know if I throw that on there, I can at least like fuck with it after the fact and make it sound how I want it, you know?
Yeah. You kind of know how to wrangle it.
Yeah,
you understand that one. Yeah.
Exactly. But I always look at it as like, meh.
Yeah.
I want that boring old mic, but it ends up being the most useful one that I have, you know?
Yeah.
So I know you're talking about like a lot of, you know, new ideas, new direction, new innovation and growth. What like adjectives or what can you tell us about these new ideas you have rolling?
I don't know. I mean, it's changing all the time. It's really like it comes down to the line between the recorded music and the live band. Because with the recorded music, I feel like I can do whatever I want, and I've never felt like there was a lack of growth really with me just like expanding my own writing style and stuff. It's all the stuff I've always wanted to do, and then like I figure out how to accomplish this kind of music or this kind of music or this sort of style of drumming or this drum sound or, you know, this guitar sound. I can figure that stuff out. Really translating it to a live band is where like growth and maturity and stuff. Like it's easy for a bunch of people that are really talented to get up on stage and like kind of play all over each other. And like, yeah, everybody individually is really good, but like something I've been noticing lately, even like last night we saw OCs and got to talk to John a little bit, and every time I see them, they're just more like that band is like they're like workhorses, you know what I mean? Like they show up, they construct this whole rig of all this crazy equipment, and everybody's got, you know, and then every night they deliver, and they deliver more and more every year that you see them come back. Like, and it's all with the most simple of like variables. Like they don't start with a lot musically, where a lot of times I'm like, you know, like I've used like 7 chords before the vocals even come in, you know what I mean? I'm like, like how much more can I throw in this? How much more complicated can it be? Like let's have a guitar solo happening and also like there's a vocal happening at the same time, and you know, and now translating it to the live band, I have this with the new band, I have this new opportunity to like focus in at like the basic elements of each tune, you know, and deliver them in a way that like you don't have to be like a jazz student to like understand in a live context, you know what I mean?
I feel like it's so easy to overcrowd something too.
It is. For me, I'm like, because my mind is moving like a million miles a minute musically, being like, and this could happen and this could happen and this could be on top of there too, you know what I mean? But that's not how the average listener is going to, it's going to just be one thing coming at you, you know?
Right.
Yeah. And I think as you grow or as you get better at things, like you're by default probably just getting better at playing all these instruments. And then you think, I have to make this. It's almost like you always want to be right on the edge of your comfort zone or something. So it makes you want to complicate things, or I don't know, this is just me speaking from experience, I think. But then when I look at like people who are like kind of like certified masters, like I think you referenced Miles Davis earlier. And the thing that makes him so special to me is the spacing. It's just the spacing. And so it's like, oh, and that is just, you know, that's feel and that's whatever, but it's not picking fast. It's not whatever. So it's like kind of interesting how like once you pass a threshold of skill, it's almost like you got to like realize what's really important, you know? Like, you know.
Yeah, I feel like I'm approaching that threshold for sure. And like also like it's part of like coming to terms with being a real adult, you know what I mean? I'm in my 30s, you know, it's like what does that mean to me? Like musically, all my heroes were like so well known and so accomplished and put out a million fucking albums by the time they were in their 30s, you know?
Right.
And to me, thinking about like now I've got this skill, like, yeah, I guess like how to pull it back and how to like be mature about it, you know? And the band I have now our ages are from like 21 to 40, I think, something like that. So it's like
really?
People at all different points in that path of like like some really, really skilled young kids that need to learn to like leave some space for other people, you know, and like when to breathe, that kind of thing. To like somebody who's been doing this a long time. That's like, it's like, no, like you need a moment to shine too. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's conservatism. I shouldn't have even attempted that word. Versus liberalism of music. You know what I mean? It's like it's not bad to be conservative with your abilities sometimes. Yeah. And Miles is definitely a great, you know, example of that, because his whole, I mean, like in his later career, like his whole forte was picking the best people and then just like sitting there most of the time listening to them play, you know, like that is like what his career became. Yeah, just like interjecting with like a couple long held notes with the wah and the trumpet or whatever, like yeah, it's genius stuff, just like finding the right people. And that's something that John Dwyer and I have talked about over the summer too. He's been kind of like checking in, coaching me through the whole finding new band members thing, you know, really? Because he's had to do it so many times, you know. Right. But yeah, like finding the right people is like it's not to be taken lightly, you know, because essentially, like, I mean, again, I'm referencing their show last night because it's still looming in my mind, but he could like stop what he's doing, you know what I mean, and just let those guys play for like 10-15 minutes and it'd be still one of the best shows you've ever seen, you know. Yeah. And he's really good at that, finding guys that are just like, it's never going to slow down, you know, it's never going to like speed up, it's going to be exactly what it's supposed to be, like rock solid backing band. Yeah, those guys are locked in every time I see them, and it's almost more impressive because it's funny that their band is set up, well, right now, this iteration of it, where it's, you know, of all the instruments, because they've got a bass and a guitar, and then it's like you'd think if you were going to add one of those, it would be like, well, that was on the guitar or whatever. Right. But it's like they added a drummer, and it's just like, but that's like, there's so much energy, and they've just like really figured out how to make that work. I'm sure that was part of his. Is amazing. Yeah, we had two drummers in the first lineup too for that same reason, that it's like, not to be like the OCs or to be like King Gizzard or whatever, but like all of us at the same time we're looking back at like James Brown and you know, Zappa had two drummers for quite a long time. Genesis even had two drummers in the Phil Collins era, you know. Yeah. So many great bands. I mean, like the Allman Brothers and like all these bands. The Feelies. That it's just, the Feelies too. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. But that it's just like there's this propulsive. I mean, it's the same reason that like a marching band like gets people all riled up. Right, you know? Right. Or yeah, like that makes sense. Drum circle gets certain people all excited. Yeah. Do you ever go to the Zilker Drum Circle on Sundays? I've never been. No, there's one down the street from our house. I guess it hasn't been happening lately, but they used to do a weekly drum circle until like midnight on like Monday nights or something. Oh, it's just like, what are you doing? But it's like, at least that was happening. I'm like, well, nobody can say shit about me recording as late as I want. You know? No, that's true. Yeah. It's kind of nice. Yeah, you're set up right here where it's like, I don't know, they're probably not going to complain. Taco shop next door. Yeah. You know, then they close early. And the people over here can't hear. They have a giant privacy fence in there in their little condo castle anyways. So yeah. Right. Yeah. That's cool though. That is, I mean, sometimes I do have to like just like step back and like, because I was like running at the park and I was like, you know, old Austin is alive somewhere, you know, like the fact that like we're right now talking about two drum circles that go on weekly, like in the same city is like wild, you know? So it's like, it's still out there. Yeah, we do stuff with Julie's family has been in Austin for a long time, and we do stuff with them. They're very like old school Austin sort of pseudo hippie mentality of like, you know, everybody grab a guitar and we'll all just sit in a circle and we'll start jamming and like play whatever song you want, you know, trade off solos, and everybody's in tie-dye, and you know, I love that stuff. I love old Austin. I mean, one of the reasons I moved here was because I knew about 13th Floor Elevators and Rocky Erickson and the whole like psychedelic heritage of the city. You know, was a big draw for me. And,
tell us that story of like when you were in Michigan and you decided to come to Austin.
Yeah, so I was living in Grand Rapids, Michigan for about 6 years up until I moved here. I moved here the end of 2014, and Yeah, I was playing in a lot of bands. I was really big into the doom metal scene at the time. I was playing in a band called Knife Ritual. That's it was a 2-piece. I was playing drums and singing. It's like the heaviest, loudest band in town, basically.
Oh, okay.
Which I loved so much, but it wasn't. I mean, I obviously wanted to do more than just that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I was getting really fed up. I was in like a cycle of like dating the wrong person, hanging out with the wrong people, drinking too much, and just like not like working one dishwashing job and like losing that job because I was too hungover to show up or something, and then getting another one, just like the same thing over and over. I was like, I really need to like do something completely different. And it was, I think it must have been in early 2014 that Holy Wave came and played in Grand Rapids. Just like, it was a totally fluke thing. They had like 2 days off before they played Detroit or something, and my roommate at the time met them in Chicago and was like, "You guys are great. Like, you have a bunch of fans in Grand Rapids. Why don't you come play a show?" On a Monday night? We like last minute set up this show at this. I wasn't really helping that much, but I played a lot of shows there at this place called the Death House. That was like a DIY warehouse skateboarding spot. They also repaired mopeds and let bands practice in the basement and stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Death House. That was like our spot. So they came and played at the Death House, and like it was packed out. Like we managed to get like 200, 300 kids out on a Monday night.
Oh,
and
wow.
Just changed a lot of people's lives, I think. But especially for me, I just like instantly was in love with their music and like got along with them really well. And they stayed at our house for a couple days. And so when I was trying to get out of Grand Rapids, like 6-8 months later, I don't even know. My timeline might be all screwed up if any of my friends watch this and like, that's not how it went down at all. But yeah, I was like, at least I know those guys, and I know that there's a lot of good music there, and I know that it never snows. So,
dude,
yeah, man.
At least that's what I thought.
That's one of the reasons we moved.
You came down here and there was the snowpocalypse or whatever. You're locked in the house. Yeah. So what was it like when you got down here, as far as like establishing yourself into the music scene? Because I mean, legitimately, I think, I don't know, like before we even reached out to you, like you'd be at shows and I would just know who you were. Like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And that's just kind of cool. Like you're just like plugged in a little bit. Like how long did that take?
And
what was that like?
That was before Nightmare Band, before any of that stuff. It should have not taken as long as it did probably, but I was like really shy when I moved here and didn't know. I was still like figuring out what Texas life was all about, what Austin life was all about, and like finding my place. And it took me I should have just gone. The very first night I was here was New Year's Eve of 2014-15.
Oh, really? That feels symbolic.
Yeah, absolutely. The first show I went to was Ronnie Spector at Spider House for New Year's Eve, and I think Cosmonauts played, and like some other bands. I should have just gone to, and it was a great show, and I was so glad that I went, but I should have just gone to Hotel Vegas that very first night, because Holy Wave was playing, and Lake of Fire was playing, which I'll get into in a second. But like basically, if I had gone that first night, it would have all kicked off like immediately, because all my friends were there. I was like too shy to like reach out to Holy Wave for a couple months and be like, hey, you guys want to hang out, or like, any bands I could play with, or like blah blah blah. But eventually I did. They hooked me up with their friends from El Paso. Had a band called Lake of Fire that needed a drummer, and that was Dylan Fernandez, Steve Madrid, and Josh Phipps, who all like kind of grew up together, were friends in El Paso. And they all moved here like right before I did. They were friends with Holy Wave. There was this whole movement at that time of like people moving from other parts of the country because they were friends with Holy Wave, and they're like, we'll just go to Austin too, and start a band if those guys can do it, But yeah, so I joined their band, and then shortly after I was working at I Love Video at the time, which was like
R.I.P.
the best job ever. Yeah, I was at the Guadalupe one, and I lost that job when they closed that store down. And so the next job I got was like, oh well, we need somebody to work tonight at Hotel Vegas, picking up one shift or whatever. And then that was basically like the next 3.5 years of my life. So I think sitting at the front door of Hotel Vegas like 5 nights a week definitely has something to do with like then everybody's gonna know you if they go to shows.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So I think that was part of it, and that helped me meet all the musicians who would later be in Nightmare Band and like all these other projects that I've done. And yeah, that's how it started. It's really just thanks to Holy Wave and to Hotel Vegas, to be honest, because otherwise I wouldn't have anything going on in this town probably.
Yeah, no, it's cool though. It's cool to like, and it's cool to be able to like, and just honestly just be known and like people know your music, you know.
Yeah, that's
cool because it is hard here, specifically, I think, just because there's so much music, and to be able to like stick out is like, it's different and special, you know, when you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. It still means a lot to me. Yeah, I mean, this is a really saturated music town for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we're still doing it, you know, and that people still want to talk about it and stuff is amazing, because I've seen so many good bands too, like just fall by the wayside or get forgotten about. Somebody moves away, and you know, I don't want that to happen. Luckily, as long as it's me and somebody else, I heard this quote recently. It may have been in somebody else's podcast, but it's, as long as it's, what is it, as me and your granny on bongos, then we've got a band or something like that. Who said that? It's such a good quote.
I don't know. Sounds like a McConaughey-ism. I don't know. Yeah, cool.
I'm going to find out now. I'm still listening and talking now.
It is interesting though, especially like in this, like you said, like you can take off. It's kind of an interesting thing because you'll like see someone around, or like maybe you hear them on KTX because they like are like highlighting somebody from around here or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost like miss the trajectory. It's like the Black Pumas, I guess, is a good example. I'm like, I didn't even see the ramp up. All of a sudden they're just like kind of on the Grammys, you know?
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird. It is cool though, because it does give you hope. It's hopeful out here.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh man, I think maybe I could reach some stuff, and from just, I guess, the people out here and the connections, and
sure.
It is a nice community. Even like not being a part of it, I hope now, like when I see you, I was like, oh, I know you now. It's cool.
Yeah.
But it's just cool to even see that there is a community. You know, I see some of these guys. I'm like, oh, I see these guys at every show. Like I see you, and I'm just like, oh, there's, you know, it's Nolan Potter.
Mm-hmm.
You always have a bag. I'm like, what's in your bag? I don't know what you
books.
All your books.
Mostly books to weigh it down, so that I just hate having my wallet and my phone and my cigarettes all in my pockets all the time.
Oh,
so I've
okay,
always got
right
a bag,
on. I'm just
and
like,
my keys and everything is like, you know.
Yeah, some sort of mystical Indiana Jones bag. I'm like, I don't know what's in there. Maybe a flute. Could be anything.
Sometimes there'll be a flute. You never know when it might come in handy.
How many instruments do you play?
Last I checked, it was probably neighborhood of 25, 30. Maybe. I mean, that sounds like a lot, but I feel like
that is a lot.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I don't know. I mean, I could sit and list them, but I don't think that would be fun for anybody to listen to. But I mean, I played trumpet in school.
I don't think I could name 25 instruments.
I played trumpet in school, so that's, you know, that's in there too. It's like, there's a lot of instruments that I can play, but it's like I'm not gonna play them in a band necessarily, but I might use them on a record here or there.
What's like the most useful? You know? Is it like piano? Like
the most useful? Yeah, probably piano.
Was piano your first?
Yeah.
Since your mom taught it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we always had a piano in the house, and
That's
you know,
cool.
at like my grandparents' house, my grandma was an amazing, accomplished pianist and organist, and cool. Every family gathering was just like circle up around grandma's piano and sing. Yeah, my family is insanely musically talented. Like I'm like the worst singer in my family.
Oh, really?
I mean, we'd always like everybody just busts out 4-part harmonies, and like you know, my uncle can like sing like opera style, and so they're amazing. Everybody plays instruments and stuff. So yeah, music was always around, and I was always encouraged to like if there's an instrument nearby, like pick it up and figure it out. And
cool.
You know, it was never like annoying or anything. Like I would get, when I got in trouble in middle school and stuff, when I'd get grounded, I'd get like my guitar taken away. You know what I mean? Because that was the only like you take away anything else. Yeah, exactly. I would get like books and guitars taken away, basically.
Whoa.
Or like one time my amp taken away. So it's like you can play your guitar, but you can't plug it in. You know, which is like torture.
Dude, that seems like it would be like a conflict for like the parent. It's like these are like enriching things, but it's the only thing he cares about. Like I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. It was my mom did her best for sure. But I mean that was the whole thing, you know. I was grounded when I bought my first like, I guess it was my second electric guitar, but the first one that I like picked out and bought for myself was a white Strat, Mexican Strat. And, yeah, I was grounded when I found it. And so I wasn't allowed to play it for the first like 2 weeks that I had it, which I'm sure if my mom sees this, she will laugh. But there was some interesting parenting choices around music for sure.
Man, I've also noticed around here that you got like so many books that I'm just like intrigued about, especially like the musician connection of, so, I mean, specifically Tolkien. It's so interesting that like so many bands and musicians are drawn to it and reference it within their music.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Tolkien was one of my very first loves ever. I mean, I was like immediately drawn in. We read The Hobbit. My mom would read out loud to us The Hobbit, and then read Lord of the Rings later on. I was like 8 or 9 or so, and then the movies came out when I was 11, which changed everything. You know, it was like suddenly this is like everybody loves Lord of the Rings, you know what I mean? And also they're like the greatest movies ever made, you know, and winning all kinds of Oscars and shit. It was just like, my brother always said when I was a kid, he's like, man, every book that you like gets made into a movie, like a giant movie franchise. He's like, but he was all into like like Jack London stories and stuff, and I was like Harry Potter, you know, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, all this stuff was like my bag. I don't know what it is about Tolkien, but it's like massively influential to me still.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's funny how like I didn't even realize like how influential it is to like some, like, because I didn't read Lord of the Rings until 3-4 years ago, something like that. And my friends were like, I should, and I was just trying to read more, so I read them, and it's funny because I was going through and I was like, oh, it was like, I think most people would hear the Led Zeppelin songs and be like, oh, that's Tolkien.
Right.
But it was the opposite for me. I like read like All That Glitters Isn't Gold in the book, and I'm like, oh, that's from the Led Zeppelin song. But it's like, oh no, this is reverse. Like,
totally.
There's like so many different references that I didn't even know what they were talking about. And then I read the books and I'm like, oh, these are all referencing Lord of the Rings. I didn't even know.
Well, even the bigger idea of like what Lord of the Rings represents is like, it's like Tolkien was writing about creation really, and examining himself as like he was such so knowledgeable about language and myth and everything, and seeing like he's like, I want to create my own world, you know what I mean? But then within that world that he created, there's Sauron, who is somebody that wants to create his own world, and he creates a thing that creates things. It's about an examination of like being an artist almost, you know what I mean? It's like like you're given this power to create worlds, but is there like when you give yourself that power, you're like becoming like godlike almost. Is that like there's like an abuse of power? It's just like this whole, I don't know, being an artist and being a songwriter, and that's the fingerprint I see of Tolkien on so much other music, not just music that like references him straight up, but the movement in the 60s and 70s of bands like we can create our own mythology, our own world around this. I mean, the Beatles being the biggest example, you know what I mean? Like they created their own little world that became the world, like that we all live in now, you know what I mean? Like, and so many bands like that, like Pink Floyd, like when you enter those records, you're like entering another realm, you know? And I think that Middle Earth was like one of the very first examples of like an artwork that took you somewhere else, you know?
That's a really good point.
How's it? Yeah, did you ever think about it like that?
No, I didn't.
Is this not a Tolkien podcast? I could go on forever.
Yeah,
Shelby's actually going to start his own podcast just about this.
Talking Tolkien.
I'm sure that's out there already.
Yeah, exactly.
Talking Tolkien.
Yeah,
but it is like something that's weird. I didn't even realize that there was like interviews with him like on video until recently, and I was watching one. There's just something magnetic about him as a person, his works. And I think, I don't know, most people just don't escape it, because I didn't even really, well, I liked Harry Potter, so I can't say that. But I was just going to say it wasn't even really like the wizard stuff, all that stuff.
It's not the fantasy of it. It's the world of it, of the characters of it, and the heart.
Yeah, there's so much heart in it. Yeah, for sure.
And that's, I don't know. I've only ever wanted to create my own worlds, you know, like when I was a little kid too, my favorite, or besides being a film composer, I wanted to be a fantasy author, because I wanted to be like J.K. Rowling and Tolkien. Not so much, I don't want to be like Rowling anymore very badly. But you know what I mean? Just like the power to create your own universes.
Yeah.
The Tolkien quote that sticks with me, because the band has been accused of being escapist, and fantasy based, and like they see that we have on the first record there's a song called Elf Curse and a song called Wizard of the Wind, and it's like, oh, they must just be Tolkien, like, and like, isn't that played out, or like, why, do we really need that in the world anymore? It's like, to me, escapism, it's like Tolkien had a quote that he was writing escapism, but not in like a frivolous way. It's like escaping from the mental prison of being a human. You know what I mean? Right, it's like we have to face reality every single day. Like you have to free your mind somehow. Man, the cat really wants to come inside. Can I pause for 1 second?
Yeah.
Of course, yeah. Couch Radio is a podcast that you're listening to. We interview bands we like. We're in Austin, Texas. We'll travel, though, so tell us who you want us to interview, and we'll try our best to interview them. We also have a band, and that band sounds like this. You like that? Great. Check us out on Spotify and everywhere else you get music. Back to the show. Does literature influence your lyrics? Since you talked about growing up and being really into books and music, I wonder.
People saying that this is all Tolkien fantasy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm always looking for ideas in books, for sure. We have a lot of books around here.
Are lyrics really like important to you? I know you mentioned maybe wanting to be an author when you were young.
Yeah. I mean, not to the extent of like. Sorry, I'm chewing still. It's gonna be real fun for the ASMR enthusiasts in the audience. That's what they want.
That's what our top comment is. There's not enough chewing.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, I mean, I think the lyrics are still there to just serve the melody to me. Like a lot.
Okay.
If that's the way it goes, a lot of times I will write lyrics first, and then the melody comes through that. But it's a complete 1-to-1 ratio of importance for me.
So you're not very like lyric centric. Like when you're listening to music, you're not really like drawn in by the lyrics.
I am with some people for sure, but I'm like, for example, like I get a lot of offers to do not a lot. I get occasionally people ask me to do like a solo acoustic set. You know what I mean? And that's just not something that I'm interested in at all. Because to me that doesn't represent me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got you.
A lot of people write great songs that could just be stripped down to one guy with an acoustic and singing. You know what I mean? Right. I don't look at my music that way. Yeah. Like the songs without the whole arrangement, without the orchestration and the layers of stuff, they're not my songs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And that might change in the future, but yeah, the lyrics are there to serve to build the world around the tunes, you know.
Do you like scat usually when you're like finding melodies on the?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, I feel like I have like a stockpile of like a dozen words that keep coming that like are the placeholder words for stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know why, but those are. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it takes a while. If I've come up with a melody and I've like developed it, like in the studio, without having words yet, it takes quite a lot longer to like come up with something that fits, because now I've like filled in every space, filled in all the little gaps with mortar. You know what I mean? Like, oh, there's a flute part now there, so if I sing there, it's not gonna work. I'll have to take the flute part out, which I really like. You know what I mean? Right. Stuff like that. Like, where does the vocal fit in when I've like spent hours like layering something and composing a thing? You know?
Yeah.
So you moved to Austin. You're in Lake of Fire. You're working at Hotel Vegas. Tell us a story about like your first album and how it really came about.
Yeah. So I was living at the time. I'd probably been at Vegas for a year and a half, 2 years. I moved in with Jason McNeely, who is the owner, one of the owners of Hotel Vegas, my boss. He needed a roommate and sounded good to me, so we lived together for a while. He let me use a lot of his he just had like a shed full of drum sets and like all kinds of vintage amps and all kinds of cool stuff. So I would use all of his stuff to record. Oh, wow. I had like a really shitty like 2007 Mac desktop that just barely ran Logic. And so yeah, I was recording all this stuff at his house, and I'm trying to think what the first thing, I guess I did The World is a Peach Goodbye was my first Bandcamp release.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to when I was thinking of like your first album, because the production on it's already pretty like cool. Like, I didn't know how you figured that out.
It has a vibe for sure. Some of it was like it would have been like a MIDI song that I made on GarageBand for fun that I had saved in my Dropbox for years, and then I took it at his house and added real drums and added guitar and whatever else, but like only had like a wave of that one song, so I had to record everything over top of what was already there, so it was all MIDI instruments. I think the first version of Seahorse Retreat is like that, where it has MIDI drums, MIDI keyboards, MIDI bass, everything, and then I just added real versions of all of that on top of what was there instead of like taking out that stuff, you know.
Whoa, okay, cool.
Yeah, so I made that and uploaded it. I just made a Bandcamp for this new thing and just made it my own name because I wasn't sure what to call it, or like didn't have any plans to make it a band. And then I made Cabernet Peaks shortly after that, which was for ended up being a Christmas present to my family because I was really broke that year. So I wrote a song, and it's named after the little ski mountain in northern Michigan where we always used to go. It's like the cheapy, like you know, normal person ski mountain, not like the fancy resort or whatever. But Cabernet Peaks, yeah. And so after doing that, and Jason, who I was living with, like heard that stuff and was like, man, this is really good. You should think about like putting a band together or like doing a bigger budget album or something. And yeah, I recorded a few more things and put them out, like Strange and Secret Peoples and a couple singles and stuff, and got a little band together. Our first show was at Hotel Vegas, like the night before South by started, I think 2017, 2018, one of those years. Yeah, it was like really well received, crazy packed show, and everybody seemed to really dig it. And then a couple months after that, Andrew Cashin from A Giant Dog, Sweet Spirit, Tear Dungeon, all these bands, he sent my stuff to Dwyer without even, he like didn't talk to me about it at all. He was just like, you got to check this out, send it to Dwyer. And then Castleface emailed me immediately, but I didn't see the email for like another 3 weeks or something. And
that's what I do. That'd be moved.
I know, because I had to like create an email account just to set up a new Bandcamp account because I had already used my old email for an old one that I was defunct now or whatever. So I like never checked that email, you know. And but yeah, so it's all, then it was like, oh shit, this is like a real thing now.
Oh, cool.
You know. So yeah, with that, again, Hotel Vegas coming, I mean, without Jason like egging me on, being like, this is something you should pursue, you know, I was just like passing time. At the time, Lake of Fire was still very much a band, and we were playing shows all the time, and Dylan had just joined Holy Wave as their new bass player, so they were on tour in like Europe. They did like a South African tour. He was gone all the time, so it was like, if he's gone, we can't play shows. What am I supposed to do with all this time, you know?
Yeah.
So that's how I started recording and everything. And yeah, McNeely was the one who pushed me. He's like my musical stepdad. He's like, you gotta do this, man. We were living together and stuff. It was weird. Yeah, it was a fun time.
So now, like, I guess getting to where you are now, like, what's your goals and aspirations? Like, what do you want to, you know, what are you trying to do next, you know? And
with this new lineup.
With the new stuff, the new lineup. And
I just really want to get to the point where we can all afford to take the time needed to, like, really see what, because there's potential for sure in being, like, a great live band, you know what I mean? And I think that in the past I have had, like, a great live band before that, like, really connected with people, but I want to do something completely different. That, I mean, anytime that we get compared to something or get like, it reminds me of this, I like instantly like, I want to do the opposite of that now. You know what I mean? Like, as many times as people are like, oh, it's like the next King Gizzard or whatever. I was like, no, I don't listen to them. I don't want anything to do with that. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm doing my own thing. And that's where, like, in the recording, I'm like trying to come up with new ways, but then, like I said, translating that to a band, you know, it's a different thing. Because in my studio, I can sit there and add instruments. Now I'm like thinking like, well, I have 6 people to work with, you know, like what's the best way for, if I want to put out a record that I know we're going to play it live, you know, like how can 6 people do this, you know? Mm-hmm. And again, simplifying things down. A lot of times I've been focused on like, you know, we'll have stuff like, and then I'm going to take a guitar solo here and it'll just go, you know what I mean? But I kind of want to lean away from guitar solos, from soloing in general, and focus more on like stuff that's going to like impact an audience, you know, not just like dazzle for a few minutes and then you forget about it later, you know, but like really something that sticks with people when they leave a show. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't have any definite plans. I'm working on a few ideas for the next few months, and like we're definitely going to get on the road again eventually, but I'm not rushing things. I mean, this whole thing this summer with the band breaking up and starting over, it's like it was a huge wake-up call that I was just kind of on this like treadmill of the whole thing. I wasn't like thinking about my own mental health. I wasn't thinking about my relationship with Julie. I wasn't you know, it was just like we had to crank it out, and I wasn't getting along with the guys because I wasn't like focused on, you know, it. After the pandemic, it's so weird to be in a band. There's like this weird like trauma that comes along with it almost, that like this could all just end at any time. You know what I mean? Yeah. That like we're like the first ones to lose everything basically. Like suddenly there's no events. Nobody can be by each other. It's like, well, what are we supposed to do? You know, like filmmakers can still have people watch their movies at home. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, the whole like live streaming thing didn't really catch on for us. We tried it a few times and I just wasn't doing it for me.
Yeah. It's not the same. Yeah.
No, it's just not. And it feels like a weird cop out to be like, like I kind of do tend to be the person, well, you know, like if you're like, well, if I can't do that, then fuck you. Like, I'm just not going to do anything. You will never see me again. You know what I mean?
I see, yeah.
Like, instead of being like, how could we could like live stream. We could all be in our own houses and then we can edit it together later. And like, we could, you know, that just wasn't, I was like angry, you know? I was like, I don't want to look at the bright side of this. I'm just going to go like write a bunch of music about how much this sucks, basically.
Oh, yeah. Interesting. Yeah, and then just the whole like unknowingness of all of it, just like, oh, it's just who knows when this will be. Right. We don't know. And yeah, like you said, I hadn't really thought about that. About like, yeah, it could end. It could. Now we know it could. Yeah. And so yeah, it's kind of weird.
I know.
Forward. And how hard it hit you with you saying you like lost that job like the same day.
Yeah, 2 jobs. I was working at a vintage store and at kind of Tropical at the time, and yeah, it was like within a day it was like no jobs, no music, no shows. Jeez. You know, can't even, I mean, we had so many people in the band that we couldn't have like bubbled together, you know what I mean? There was like 7-8 people in the sort of lineup at the time, that it was just insane to try and keep like, you know, because then they have their girlfriends and their friends and then their, you know what I mean? It was like we were just like, we have to be completely done, basically. Yeah, it was tough. It's crazy to think about. I mean, there's nothing that, like, I can't think of a single, like, human disaster of the past that, like, stopped music from happening. You know what I mean? Or stopped live music from happening. Even in World War II, there were bands playing, you know?
Right, yeah.
Like...
And it always has been that thing, like, even if there's, I mean, obviously on a micro level for people individually, always, but there was probably a lot of events going on during like World War II, like trying to like, okay, we need to like, you know, give somebody some escapism, like we were talking about earlier, you know.
I mean,
but this one was like, well, you can't.
The musical landscape too. I mean, like the transition from like the swing era to like the bebop era was World War II, you know what I mean? Where it's like,
okay,
the world is serious, you know, like shit is scary and it's not just all dancing and fun, you know, and so let's like really be good at our instruments and like be frantic and fast and get all of our thoughts out, you know. And I think the Great Depression is like that too. It's like that could have stopped music from happening, but it didn't stop music from happening. Or like Prohibition, you know, like that was like they were trying to stop music. Essentially, I mean, like in a roundabout way, it's like there's no booze, there's no clubs, there's no bands, you know.
Right.
But instead, it was the opposite. It just like exploded music out there. This is the first time that like in human, at least modern human civilization, that it's like, no, there's nothing, like you can't go see a band. Basically, you can watch a band on a screen, you know.
Yeah.
But that's never ever going to be the same thing.
But I think now is like, as we talk, you know, we're starting to see like a response to all of that. You know, people creating things.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's always a response.
It has that like frantic nature of like, I mean, like the way that bands are forming and like people just like doing crazier shit than's ever been done before, you know?
Yeah.
But it's weird. I mean, then there's the element of social media that feeds into that too, that like how much of that is for a performative thing, you know what I mean? Like we were saying earlier, like it's just like another thing to scroll past, you know?
Yeah. It's really hard to figure out because everyone's like, well, and it's true, like that's where you market. That's where people are.
Yeah.
And that's where, you know, like if you want someone to listen to, and it is like convenient and everything, but there is something about it where like there's so much that it just becomes like, it's so easy to scroll by.
Yeah.
And it becomes like, you know how much work it takes to create like an album or a song or whatever, and how much like heart and everything goes into that. And then it's just like, it almost feels like, well, how do I get that across, you know? Because it's such a just swipe. And it's weird. It's hard to figure out how to navigate it, you know?
Right, because there's going to be, I mean, when you make a new record and it comes out on vinyl, there's going to be like a you know, group of people that are like, I'm going to listen to this the way it was meant to be listened to. But the average person is just going to put it on their phone, you know, and like
totally.
30 seconds, skip, 30 more seconds, skip.
Yeah.
And I do that all the time too. And I like catch myself doing it. It's like, that's not the way you're supposed to consume an album that somebody spent months trying to create, you know? And I kind of had that mentality going into Music Is Dead too. I was like, I know that it kind of has like this lackadaisical feel in the work ethic of it, of like you listen to the production and stuff, because I knew it's like people are just gonna like play this on their phone for 30 seconds and skip to the next thing, you know what I mean? It'll be like, it'll hit with a few people and they'll at least put headphones on, you know what I mean? It's like once you get the headphones on, then you get a different experience. Then once you get the vinyl and put that on, then you get the real thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But even just like listening to something all the way through, or like watching something as it's intended, I can't watch something with subtitles for the most part, and this will probably segment our audience hard, but like I just can't have them on but I think also I'm missing so much of it. I'm supposed to be watching the thing and I'm missing it because I can't help but read it.
Yeah.
And so I think with like albums, sometimes by default, like for example, like in my old car, I had a CD player and it just always had Crazy Rhythms in it, that Feelies record, and it was just always in there. So like if there wasn't anything on it, I would just like click it on. And so I probably listened to it, I don't know how many times, like tons. And it's just like the biggest example to me of like just you need to listen to something and absorb it, and it takes time, and then like time, and then pretty soon I'm just like, oh yeah, I love every song on it. But on first listen it wasn't like that. And so it's like, how do you get someone to like, you know, because it's like people want immediate gratification, but like that's not even the best. I would wager that maybe some of your favorite artists are things that initially you're like, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
Because like pretty much all my favorites.
Oh, absolutely.
Like
yeah.
that.
I mean, the two biggest for me that I always talk about are Zappa and Magma. And both of those bands are not for, you know, it's like really hard to find a tune that is going to grab somebody right away. And they both have massive discographies, you know.
Totally.
But the average listener, it's something that it's like, it's representative of like a path that you've gone in your life, that you get to this point when you're listening to this band that like a Zappa album just hits you. You're like, yes, like this was made for me. But it's only because I've gone down the road of all this weird stuff coming from like, you know, pop punk and like the humor of that and the attitude of that. And like, also like I grew up loving show tunes. Like musicals were like a huge thing in our family, and we'd like, you know, West Side Story and the Peter Pan musical and Sound of Music and all this stuff was like, that was the music of my childhood. All this stuff, like the stuff you absorb over your whole life leads you to this path, you know, to the point where you can like hear something really weird for the very first time and be like, hell yeah, dude, like I'm into this, you know?
Yeah.
But the average people, like an average person doesn't have that, you know, or it leads them to somewhere else, to music that I don't like, you know, which is totally fine too, because I don't have that experience, you know. Like I don't know, like I was saying about King Gizzard, it seems like on paper that that's a band that I should love, but there's something about it that just never hit me, you know what I mean? Really? And I guess that's a good thing too, because we're essentially like peers in age and in sort of the same, like, you know, demographic of listener and stuff like that. If I listen to them, or if I listen to like even like the OCs obsessively, like I never listened to OCs until Castleface picked us up, and I was like, I better figure out what this is all about, you know. I knew John as like a live performer from working at Hotel Vegas, but that was about it. It's like if I listen to these bands as obsessively as a lot of my friends do, I feel like my music would be changed in a big way, you know.
You would like fear it being too derivative?
Yeah, because essentially, like, I really am like a sponge, you know. Like, it's really easy for me to like start ripping things off without realizing it. Right. And I've always been like that with like, if I, like we were talking about Hook earlier, like when I was a kid, I put Hook on, and then like as soon as it was over, I was like, I am Peter Pan now. You know what I mean? Like I put the costume on, and I'd like for the whole day I'd be Peter Pan, and I'm just like that. Like if I like something, I will like try to like live it out and like see what it's like to be like that. You know what I mean?
Man.
So
you guys are very similar.
Yeah, I think we are. Yeah. Like I do the same thing. It's like you want to just. It's sometimes I just like become so obsessed with something. It's like I want to know everything about this. Yeah. Every single thing. Yeah. You know. Absolutely. And just dive into it. That's cool.
Yeah, I'll spend hours on Wikipedia reading about shit, and I think that's why those two, why Frank Zappa and Magma, both have like stuck with me for so long, because there's endless stuff to find out about it, you know what I mean? Yeah. And there's always feels like there's still some mystery, you know what I mean? Like it could go deeper, and like knowing that like underneath Zappa's house there's like a vault of all these recordings that are probably never going to see the light of day, you know what I mean? Like it's that kind of shit that like keeps me going, you know? And also that kind of thing that I'm trying to like cultivate in my own career is not to be like you know, posting TikToks every single day and showing videos of me working in the studio. And so I'm sure that there's like people that would dig that, but like, and that's how I felt about the live stream thing too. It's like my favorite stuff is stuff that has mystery to it, you know, that like there's something to discover, that it's not just somebody putting everything in your face all the time. Like, here's everything you ever need to know about me. It's like, that's boring. You know?
Yeah, I agree. And it's like, but it's like a fine line. There is some stuff where for me, I just feel like I agree with that sentiment of like, there is something to the mystery of things though. It makes things exciting. And then just trying to navigate it, because it's all new. I mean, it's new for everybody, and just every day it's a new landscape, and it's like trying to figure it out. And we got people, you know, record labels telling you got to make more TikToks to whoever. Like, I don't know, we sold 9 million records. I don't know. Like, you know, like,
I saw that article too. It was just like, that's insane to think of a musician being told by a label like, you're not posting enough on social media.
Yeah,
like,
it's crazy.
I hate that. I was all ready to delete my Instagram when I read that. It's like, I don't ever want to, you know, I don't. And it sucks because you're right. Earlier you said like, this is how you promote music. I mean, there is no other way anymore, you know? Yeah. Like, there's no way to do anything anymore without it. You know, like, what am I going to do? Put like flyers up around town? Like,
yeah.
That's the alternative, you know? Or like zines and that kind of stuff. But
there's like a big there's like a romantic part, because I think I talked about this earlier before we were setting up, that like I almost have to like tell myself that like, oh, I actually like doing this stuff, so okay, put some stuff up on Instagram or whatever, but it feels almost like burdensome. But that all being said, there's like a part of me that just feels like it'd be really fun to just like, rather than do all that, or maybe just in addition to like, it'd be cool to like make a billboard, right? Like, but like no one does billboard, you know. I drive down Lamar and I'm like, man, there's some really cool like billboard placement on this street, you know. And it just feels like that'd be fun. I would love
to see that in Austin. If all the billboards had local band stuff on it, that would be amazing. I mean, there's a lot of it. Like, you know, you see, like at Waterloo and stuff, it'll be like, oh, that's my friend's band. They got the big placement on the front window or whatever, you know. Yeah. I love that kind of shit, because when I was a kid, like coming from the middle of nowhere, like seeing stuff like that, like seeing a band that I knew have like a flyer in the record store. Like when I first moved to Grand Rapids, I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like I thought I was in like School of Rock or something. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That it can't be understated how big of an impact that movie had on me too when I was a kid. Like my God.
Preaching to the choir on that one.
Yeah. Opened the door was wide for sure.
So many of our lessons that we hold dear today came from that movie.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's still I cry every time. I absolutely love that movie, and I think it was a big deal for that one. And honestly, it sounds weird, but I think Napoleon Dynamite were like, for our generation, it was like these are like watershed moments. You know what I mean? Like Napoleon Dynamite changed everything about humor for our entire generation.
Oh, really did? That's crazy.
Yeah, I think that was the first movie that was like ironically funny. You know what I mean? It was like, and and everything after that, like that defined like early internet humor that like changed the world. You know.
I remember watching it.
Go ahead.
So well, I remember watching. I watched it at Josh's house for the first time, I think, because he had seen it before me. And then I remember because there was so much hype around it because it was only in like 9 theaters in Indiana or something.
I had one friend that saw it in theaters and like came to school the next Monday or whatever. It's like, you guys, you have no idea. Was quoting.
I was that friend. Yeah.
Well, it's crazy that like because it had so it had all this like weird undergroundy kind of hype,
right?
Which is also an interesting thing that doesn't really exist anymore because of like the internet, but.
Yeah,
it's just on Reddit now.
Right, exactly. The underground Reddit hype. You just have to scroll one page over.
But this is like the point. And then when I finally saw it, I just remember like, because like to what you're saying, it's a different thing. And I was expecting this type of humor from just typical humor or something. And then I watched it and I was just confused. I remember at the end. And that being said, though, it's so crazy that to this day, I think it's funnier every time I watch it. I don't even understand how. I've seen it 100 times.
I know. I don't get it either, but it really defined, a moment in time and everything that was to come after it. It's so crazy. I mean, that's what like earlier I said that we're in the post irony age. It was like that was the movie that at least for me was like that's it. Like everything's changed now. Everything is funny. Like if you look at it, you know what I mean? Like and that was like the birth of like memes too. You know what I mean? Essentially, like you can just put a picture and any word and say that it's funny. It's like it's funny now. And now that's like the way that like kids are like learning information about the news and about like politics and about religion and whatever. It's like everything is memeified. That's one thing. I put it in a lyric too of a thing I put out recently, but I don't want the band to ever become a meme. I see that happen to a lot of like bands get popular and that's awesome. Like suddenly you have a bunch of fans, but then your fans turn you into something that's not, you know what I mean? And I think that absolutely has happened to King Gizzard. It's like a meme of a band now, at least in I don't know if they're like trying to be a meme or not, but like, like just looking at the Reddit page, it's like, I guess it's like Grateful Dead kind of had that going for them in the 70s too, and Fish in the 90s. You know what I mean? Where it's like, if you're in, like, like you just have to say one word, you know what I mean? Yeah. And like everybody understands what you're talking about. But King Gizzard is definitely like the new Fish in some ways.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that like they've cultivated some fan base that is like, because most of the fan bases that are like this are like, 14-year-old girls.
Right.
And that's not a bad thing. I'm just saying that like, and it's just so interesting that translated over to like an obsessive fan base that's like mainly like 30-year-old dudes or whatever. It's so interesting, and it's like it's really cool. Is. I like King Giz. Yeah. I just find it so interesting.
OCs are the same way, where it's just like, how did this where did this come from? It's not necessarily like teenage kids, although there are some, but it's like I feel like it's a demographic of people that was like, we don't have any like new band that's like for us, you know what I mean? It kind of felt like that. Mars Volta felt like that to me in high school, that like they were like, there's nothing else like this, and they have like this rabid fan base in this like world that you can dig into, and but I feel like OCs and King Giz are like that now, and
they did create their own world. It's like what we were talking about.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one thing that when I knew they were doing that kind of stuff, I was like, well, now I definitely can't listen to them because I love that shit.
Right.
That will like.
If you weren't a fellow artist, I'm sure it'd be different.
Exactly. I would be super into it, and if I was in high school, I'd be super into it, and 15 years down the road, start a band that was like heavily influenced by, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
I think
doing it now at the same time is like, I have to keep my distance from a lot of stuff. I always tell people, I'm like, I'm not done with the 70s yet. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm still working my way through the decades. I can't start listening to a band that just came out. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. Yeah. I don't know. I think people really want something to sink their teeth into. So I think it's cool that like, because people love that stuff. It is cool. That's cool.
Shelby and I dream about it. We dream about like creating our own like world and what that would look like.
Yeah.
Not our own language, not like Magma, but just like, building things and having
just like creating all your own stuff and like making stuff and like kind of just doing
very DIY.
Yeah,
I think Zappa is a really good example of that too, because he was very much an early adopter of the DIY aesthetic. He's like, I'm going to start my own label. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to like do all the business deals myself. So like if a label wants to work with me, they don't get any say over anything. You know what I mean? And like hiring all his own musicians and like having people in the family that would like build gear for people and like, make t-shirts and make album covers. And it was like all part of this like in-house sort of industry thing that's kind of like what we do here too, on a much smaller, much lower budget scale. But yeah, that's all part of it. It's not even like intentionally like I'm going to create like this album's going to be about this, you know what I mean? But after it comes out and you put it up against all the other albums, it's like there's connections here and here and here, and it's starting to become like a web. You know what I mean? Like, there's a continuity to everything, at least that I do. I think it's all part of some mythology. It might not be as like much of a mythology as Magma has, or like even Zappa with his conceptual continuity was what he called it. Like, there's clear like markers throughout each album that connect them all together. But I feel like there is that even when I'm not intentionally trying to have things connect. There's like these threads that carry out, and it's like, oh, it is like a little world. It's a little universe, and it all kind of looks the same. It all kind of sounds like they could live next to each other.
There is a through line. After jumping around your band camp the last couple of weeks, and I'm like, all of a sudden I'm dancing with elves in a mystical forge, and then I'm jumping between dreams, and then I'm walking downtown at night, slow-mo, putting my sunglasses off. Like, there's just all these different vibes that you put out there, and throughout the different, albums, I feel like you've had a lot of different kind of tones and sounds and song structures and different experimentations. But there is a through line, and that's, I'm excited to see what you come out with next.
Yeah, it's like channel surfing, but it's all on the same TV. You know
right.
what I mean?
It's like you're at a buffet, but it's all coming out of the same kitchen.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's what I want too, because I'm very ADD. I'm not ever gonna. I don't know. I have some stuff that sounds similar to other stuff, but I'm always pursuing some new kind of sound, but still wanting it to connect. And it's good to know that it does on its own,
Yeah,
totally, man.
It's definitely cool to like have it's just like, it doesn't have to be a specific thing, whatever, but you can tell it's from the same brain. Because I think everybody's like that. Like, you don't just like one thing or whatever. And so like, it's cool to like get somebody, and it's like, and it's more representative of like an actual human experience, know? And so when it's a reflection of like this human, it's cool. It's like walking into your house. Like, you do get like a reflection of like who you guys are by just being in here. And so that's like a cool thing that is reflective in music too. And it's cool that, you're cultivating that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've been very generous with your time. We always, and thank you for opening up your home/studio for us.
It's been great. We're
awesome.
Not going to do anything today otherwise, probably.
Just
lounge around.
I am curious, like, what is and I know you're in a transitional phase right now, but what does like the average day of Nolan Potter look like?
Oh, man. So
if there is one.
Yeah, I guess the average day, at least in this new house for like the summer that we've been here so far, I'm probably going to have to, Julie's looking at me like I'm interested to know too. So Julie works early in the morning every day. So we wake up very early, usually about 7 o'clock or so. And I'll hang out with the cat for a bit, make breakfast, have my coffee, smoke a cigarette. I don't know. I mean, I try not to, as much as I want this to be my job, I'm wary of having like, this is the time I'm going to go into the studio and this is the time I'm going to be done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'll sit out here with a guitar for like an hour or two, watch something on TV and try and write through some ideas. And then I'll go into the studio and pull up like the last few projects I was working on and like do some mixing stuff, maybe sit at the piano and learn some jazz changes, and you know what I mean? And I try and change it up throughout the day, have a shower halfway through the day, listen to some podcasts while I'm in there, you know. Yeah, get back in the studio. One thing I really like when I work in the studio, it's so easy when you're in a home studio to just be like in your robe and just like in there barefoot, like just like I'm working on a song now, and like I try to like shower and like put on an outfit and have like my shoes on, like when I'm really gonna work, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though there's nobody else here, I could do whatever I want. I could be in there naked for, you know what I mean, for as much as it matters to anybody. But just being like, this is like, I'm treating it like I'm in a different place now. You know what I mean? Like I'm doing my job now.
Right.
And yeah. So, and then I'll usually, I mean, I have a lot of times I'll be like working on commissions and stuff, and I work with Dylan a lot. So like usually 1 or 2 days a week I'll be over at his studio working on something. Whether it's like that project we did for Dungeons and Dragons, or we're doing this one for Library of the Occult, which is this UK label that's really cool. We have this collaboration with them coming out. So yeah, it's kind of just like picking which projects I'm going to work on. Right now everything's kind of up in the air because I don't have a solid deal with Castle Face about what the next record is going to come out. They're working on building a studio, like an official Castle Face Records like recording studio right now. So
cool.
A lot of their time and money is sunk into that. So I'm just kind of waiting for all that to, you know, before I'm like, hey, let's put out another record, you know. But
are they building it in LA?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's right at the bottom of the hill from John's house, which is convenient for him.
Yeah, naturally. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's gonna be sick. I really hope to work there someday. I hope nobody ever told me I'm not allowed to talk about it, so But yeah, it's right, it's in Highland Park and it's gonna be sick, and but
so cool.
I'm sure we'll end up recording there eventually or doing something.
Awesome.
But yeah. So yeah, I mean, and then Julie gets, if we're still talking about my day, Julie gets home around 4 and we hang out for a while, and then we kind of work on our separate art projects for a while, and then make dinner and watch Star Trek or, you know, whatever else, Star Wars, stars, both Wars and Trek. We've been watching the new Lord of the Rings TV show, which we're digging a lot.
Oh yeah, I'm watching that too. Cool.
Yeah.
Will you be posting these Star Trek costumes?
Probably. I might wear one at our next show. We're playing on the night before Halloween, so
perfect.
That's perfect for you.
Yeah, it'll be
the Nightmare Band.
Yeah, we'll see. I'd love if the whole band could dress like they're in Starfleet. That'd be amazing.
Hey, we got enough time. Okay, it's the beginning of October now.
Fund their own costumes. I don't quite have a costume budget yet.
I'm not shelling out for prosthetic ears. Okay.
Our ears were sitting right on the table before you all got here.
Right on.
Well, we always end the podcast the same way.
Okay.
Do you have 2 artists or songs that you've been really into lately, or been just like inspired by historically that mean a lot to you? Maybe a Magma tune, perhaps?
Yeah, I mentioned Zappa and Magma, and I think those are always going to be with me. Oh, wait, before I forget, that the quote about "it's me and your granny on bongos," it's a band. That's Marky Smith from The Fall who said that.
Okay.
He said, if it's me and your granny on bongos, it's The Fall.
Okay.
And I remember that because I saw that in an interview with Dwyer that came out recently. I was like, man, that sounds like me too. Anyways, I'm trying to think. I mean, I've mentioned my 2 biggest loves enough in one thing. I'm looking through my recently listened to. Oh, this album I would recommend people listen to this album by the Bonzo Dog Band called The Donut in Granny's Greenhouse. We've been playing a lot. It's like they were like the band equivalent of Monty Python, essentially, like Friends of Monty Python. And
I was gonna say that sounds like the most UK thing.
Yeah,
ever.
Yeah, and we're obsessed with British comedy. I mean, I can't believe I haven't talked about it in this podcast up to now, but that consumes quite a lot of our thought process is British humor. Yeah, that album has been great. We've been listening to it a bunch recently. We got a copy recently. What else? I mean, I guess I've been into a lot of Todd Rundgren lately, which is not unusual for me, but I've been like actually sitting down and learning his tunes and seeing how he changes chords and like, yeah, I feel like as much as I love Zappa and Magma and all the other crazy stuff that I love, I feel like Todd is the one that I relate to the most. Like he was not above just like playing all the instruments on every song of an album. Like The Hermit of Mink Hollow is one of my favorite ones right now, that he played every single thing on it and recorded all of it in almost complete isolation. So that's like, you know, Zappa never played his own drums as far as I know. I'm sure he did at some point, but you know what I mean? It's
Reddit
like,
boards are just lighting up.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, you know, it's just like something about really like, whatever my limitations are on the instrument, like I'll take that all in, you know, and that's what makes the song. Like I could have like the craziest jazz drummer come over and play all over this song, but because I'm here right now and the drums are here right now and I've got sticks in my hand, I'm going to do what I can do on it. And that's the Todd Rundgren thing, you know?
Yeah, that's cool.
So, yeah, listen to some Todd, listen to some Bonzo Dog Band. I mean, look up any of my playlists on Spotify, and yeah, I've got some good tunes on there.
Cool.
Right on. Well, we're excited to see you play live.
Yeah, I know. I hope it happens soon. Yeah, let me know when y'all are coming to a show, and we'll get y'all in and get you up front.
That sounds like fun.
Hell
We'll
yeah.
be there.
We will do that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, you guys, for having me and for coming over. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, this is great.
He's the only guy that gets a pass. That's what we've always said too. If you're a drummer and you really need to wear shorts, I understand. Like nobody's gonna see your legs anyway. But if you're not John Dwyer, you got no business wearing shorts on stage, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, it's so